Look like we have some very concerning updates about Caitlin Clark injury for this
Today,
one here.
we have got to talk about Caitlin Clark's injury, and most specifically, the reporting around Caitlin Clark's injury, because I feel like it is getting stranger by the day. It has been a month now that Caitlin has been out, and we still don't know when she will be returning to the court, if she will be returning to the court this season.
The Caitlin Clark injury story just got a whole lot more confusing, and now even journalists are dropping updates that make the WNBA look like they're hiding something. Fans are demanding answers, and the clock is ticking on her season. Do you think they're being honest about her injury, or is this a bigger cover-up than we thought? All right, let's set the scene. Caitlin Clark hasn't played since July 17th. That's almost a month of no on-court action for the league's biggest draw in her second season as a pro, and the official word? Groin strain. Just a strain. The kind of injury that usually heals in a couple of weeks. So why is she still out? Well, that's where this gets messy. The Indiana Fever front office, the WNBA injury reports, and certain connected journalists have all been feeding the public pieces of information that don't seem to add up. First, the Fever lists Clark as a game-time decision for certain games. Sounds promising, right? Except, as many fans believe, that label is just for ticket sales. You slap game-time decision next to Caitlin Clark's name, and suddenly more people are buying seats just in case they get to see her return.
First one to screenshot this, and Scott Agnes was replying to someone else's comment who said, "Just can't wait until Cece is back. She's the most dynamic, electric player in the WNBA. Great job, Lexi." And then Scott Agnes replied, and he said, "Have patience, at least several more weeks."
But then enter Scott Agnes, a reporter with local connections who isn't exactly a fan favorite. For whatever reason, Fever and Clark supporters have had their issues with him, and this latest update didn't help. When fans started questioning if Clark was coming back soon, Agnes replied with flat, "Have patience, at least a couple weeks." No encouragement, no optimism, just a timeline that would push a return dangerously close to the end of regular season.
Now, Scott Agnes is a beat reporter for the Indiana Fever. He has been covering them relentlessly all season, and we have gotten a lot of great information from Scott over the season. And I actually went to his YouTube channel and just kind of skimmed through the comments to see if there was anything else. There was one other reply where he was replying to someone and basically said, like, "You have to trust me or just trust me."
Naturally, fans didn't take that well. Some accused him of being negative or even having an agenda against Clark. Others point out that this couple weeks projection doesn't match what we've been hearing from inside the Fever camp. Namely, that she's been running full court for over a week. If you believe the optimistic updates, Caitlin has been working at full speed, building endurance, and adding more on-court drills each day. So why is a connected reporter telling everyone it's still weeks away? It raises a bigger question. Are we getting the truth about her injury, or are they downplaying something more serious? Because here's the reality. A simple groin strain doesn't normally sideline a professional athlete for 30-plus days, unless there are complications. Muscle tears, maybe a full rupture, sure, but a strain? You expect to see progress a lot sooner.
The easiest thing about this last groin injury with Caitlin Clark is how it's been covered. The day after she had the groin injury, she was listed as day-to-day. And then a couple weeks after that, then she was listed to being out indefinitely. Now, ESPN had August 12th as the circled return date for Caitlin Clark to get back onto the court. And just yesterday, she was listed as a game time decision for today's game against the Dallas Wings. And then after practice yesterday, Coach Stephanie White basically came out and said, like, no, Caitlin Clark hasn't even been practicing. So they changed it from a game time decision to her being out.
That's where people start speculating. Some think Clark's rapid muscle gain this offseason might have messed with her mobility, adding bulk too fast and throw off your balance, and put extra strain on certain joints and muscles. If her equilibrium is off, it could make her more injury-prone or make her recovery take longer. Others think there's a political angle. Clark's presence on the floor changes the whole league's viewership numbers, so the WNBA may be carefully timing her return for maximum impact. Maybe they want her back for a key matchup or a playoff push, not just some random mid-August game. Then there's a theory that the Fever are simply protecting their investment. If they're playoff bound, why risk re-injury in the last few weeks of the regular season? That's a fair point, until you realize there are only 11 games left before the postseason. Stephanie White, the Fever's head coach, hasn't exactly cleared things up either. She admitted Clark is doing more in terms of running and movement, but has a return to full practice. Translation, she's not game ready. And when pressed on a timetable, no clear answer That's where the spooky feeling in Indiana comes from. Fans want transparency, but they're getting half statements, conflicting reports, and vague reassurances. Meanwhile, ticket buyers and TV audiences are left guessing if they'll see Clark again before September.
It's up to viewer discretion. It's up to the fans if they want to believe what he's saying, but several more weeks pretty much puts Caitlin Clark to coming back at the very end of the regular season. If you look at the Indiana Fever's schedule right now, they only have 12 games left, and there is exactly 4 weeks left in the regular season.
And the calendar isn't doing the Fever any favors. The final regular season game is on September 9th. If Scott Agnes' couple weeks comment is correct, Clark might not be back until late August, maybe even the start of September. At that point, she could end up missing the rest of the regular season entirely. That scenario is already fueling speculation. Would the Fever really hold her out for the playoffs? Would the WNBA allow its biggest star to sit for weeks just to save her for the postseason? It's not just about basketball. It's about optics. The WNBA has leaned heavily on Clark's star power all season. She drives ratings, sells tickets, and brings in national media coverage. If she's absent for a month with a minor injury, it makes the league look either unprepared, dishonest, or both. And here's another wrinkle. Fans feel like certain media members, Agnes included, aren't helping. Whether it's his tone, his choice of words, or his ties to people inside the Fever organization, his updates don't read like neutral reporting. They sound like someone controlling the narrative. That's why this whole situation has turned into more than just an injury report. It's a trust issue. Fans don't trust the team, to be honest. They don't trust the league to be transparent. And they don't trust certain reporters to give them the real story. Meanwhile, Clark's absence is being felt on the court. The Fever are fighting for playoff position. And without her, the offense just doesn't have the same punch. They've got games against the Dallas Wings, the Mystics, and other teams they should beat. But without Clark's scoring and playmaking, nothing's guaranteed. The frustration is building, and every day without a definitive update just adds to the tension. The truth is, the longer Caitlin Clark sits out, the more this feels less like a basic injury recovery and more like a strategic decision from people who aren't saying the quiet part out loud. The WNBA is in a strange spot. They got their biggest star in just her second year, and she's already proven she can carry ratings and attendance like nobody else in the league. That kind of player is rare. You don't just toss her out on the floor without thinking about the bigger picture. But the problem is, the bigger picture for the league might not be the same as the bigger picture for fans. Fans want to see Clark playing every night if she's healthy. They want to watch her running the offense, hitting logo threes, and racking up assists. The league might be looking at her as a long-term investment, deciding when and where she gets the most exposure. It's the classic short-term versus long-term battle. And in the meantime, nobody's being clear about which one they're prioritizing.
Time of the year is when the WNBA should be playing their very best basketball. Every team right now is gearing up for playoffs. This should be the time of the year that every team is turning into a well-oiled machine. All teams should be peaking and should be firing on all cylinders at this point in time. Every team is fighting for a spot in the playoffs. Caitlin Clark should not be thrown back into any mix if she doesn't have significant practices under her belt before she goes into game speed. You can try to simulate game speed as much as you want in practice. You will never be able to. Game speed is game speed. There's also a lot more adrenaline, all of these different things pumping when you're playing in front of a sold out crowd that the Indiana Fever do every single night. If I'm their coach, she needs to practice for at minimum a week.
When Stephanie White says there's no timetable for Clark's return, it's the kind of answer that's technically true but tells you nothing. No timetable could mean she's back in 3 days or 3 weeks. It could mean she's already ready, but they're just keeping it quiet. Or it could mean the groin strain is more than just a strain. The lack of clarity is what drives people insane. If you know she's not returning for 2 weeks, just say it. If you're protecting her for the playoffs, just say it. But instead, we get this drip feed of vague updates that are almost designed to keep speculation alive. And speculation is exactly what we have now. Tons of it. Some people believe this is purely physical. Clark's body went through rapid changes between her rookie and sophomore seasons, adding muscle and size to handle the WNBA's physical play. The problem is, rapid gains can sometimes overload certain muscle groups or mess with body mechanics. If her balance is slightly off or her stride is altered, that groin injury could be the result, and rushing her back could risk a bigger injury. Others think this is about leverage, keeping her off the floor until there's a marquee game or a playoff series where her return will mean maximum headlines. That might sound cynical, but let's not pretend sports leagues haven't done similar things before. Then there's a dynamic between Clark and the Fever organization. From the outside, it doesn't exactly look like a warm and fuzzy relationship. Sure, they've said all the right things publicly, but there have been hints of tension. Some believe not everyone in the front office is thrilled with the Caitlin Clark effect because it shifts attention away from the rest of the team. When you got one player getting 90% of the media coverage, it can ruffle feathers, even if that coverage is what's selling out your arena. And when someone like Scott Agnes, who has deep ties in Indiana media and is said to be close with Fever insiders, starts putting out timelines that contradict fan optimism, it feeds that perception of an internal divide that, let's also be real here. When you list Clark as a game-time decision for multiple games in a row, you're not doing it for no reason. Fans aren't stupid. They know what that label does. It gets people to buy tickets. It gets people to tune in. It's marketing dressed up as injury reporting. And if the actual plan is to keep her out, that's a bait and switch. You don't need to be a conspiracy theorist to see why people think this is all about business. The timing couldn't be trickier. The Fever are still fighting for playoff positioning, but they've only got 11 games left before the regular season wraps on September 9th. If Clark misses another 2 weeks, like Agnes suggested, she could return with only a handful of games left at that point. Is it even worth it to put her back in before the playoffs? Do you risk her aggravating the injury for a game against a non-contender, or do you play the long game and save her for when it matters most? This is where the decision becomes a PR nightmare. If they sit her for the rest of the regular season, the optics are awful. It says they're willing to deprive fans, and by extension ticket buyers, of seeing the league's biggest star just to hedge their playoff bets. And let's not forget, this isn't happening in a vacuum. This entire season has been a constant conversation about how Clark is treated on the court, by officials, by opponents. She's been targeted with physical play since day one, and the league has been criticized for letting too much slide. If her season ends with her missing a huge chunk of games due to injury, it will inevitably lead to more questions about whether enough was done to protect her in the first place. Fans are already saying it. The WNBA wanted her for the marketing, but didn't do enough to keep her healthy. That's a terrible narrative for the league to carry into the playoffs. Meanwhile, the schedule doesn't care about injury drama. The Fever have the Dallas Wings next, a game they should win even without Clark, followed by the Mystics. Every win matters right now, and every loss without Clark will just make the rush her back voices louder. The catch is, rushing her back could backfire massively. If she plays at 80% and re-injures herself, you can kiss the playoffs goodbye. That's the tightrope they're walking. And they're doing it while refusing to give fans a safety net of clear communication. This whole thing also highlights just how dependent the WNBA has become on Clark's presence. The second she's out, the buzz dips. It's not gone entirely. Other stars still put on great games, but the casual fans tuning in for Clark are the ones who boost those numbers into record-breaking territory. That's why some people suspect her absence is being managed more like a TV show storyline than a sports injury. Keep the audience guessing, keep the suspense alive, then bring her back for the big season finale moment. It's a cynical take, but it's hard to dismiss when so many other pieces don't make sense. The silence from Clark herself is also telling. She hasn't been out there making public statements about wanting to return as soon as possible. She hasn't hinted that she's being held back. That could mean she's fully on board with the plan, or it could mean she's just not the type to stir the pot in public. Either way, her absence from the conversation leaves fans relying on secondhand reports from people like Agnes. And when those reports feel negative or vague, frustration boils over. And speaking of Agnes, his tone in all this is what really set people off. Saying have patience sounds fine in theory, but when fans are desperate for their favorite player to return, it comes across as dismissive, especially if you're known for not being the most upbeat voice about Clark in the first place. It's one thing to deliver bad news. It's another to make people feel like you're scolding them for caring. Combine that with the fact that he's reportedly close with Stephanie White, and you can see why people think his updates are less about journalism and more about pushing a certain message. So, where does that leave us? With 11 games left, no timetable, and a growing suspicion that we might not see Caitlin Clark in a Fever jersey again until playoffs. Or, worst case, not at all this season. That's the unspoken fear right now. If she's not back by the last week of August, it becomes a real possibility. And if that happens, the backlash will be brutal, not just from Fever fans, but from the entire WNBA audience who've been tuning in to see her play. It's one thing for a star to miss games due to injury. It's another for the handling of that injury to feel like a bait and switch. Right now, the Indiana Fever and the WNBA are playing a dangerous game with how they communicate, or don't communicate, about Clark's status. The more they hide behind vague statements, the more fans will fill in the gaps with their own theories. And once those theories take hold, you can't just clarify them away. Maybe she really is just a couple weeks away. Maybe the groin strain is exactly what they've said it is. Maybe this is all just an overreaction. But if that's true, then the league and the team have done an awful job of keeping the public confident. Because right now, every day that passes without a firm update just feels like more proof that something bigger is going on. And that's the core issue, trust. Fans don't feel like they're getting the truth. And until Clark is back on the court, that doubt isn't going anywhere. The injury has become more than just a physical setback. It's become a storyline about transparency, priorities, and whether the WNBA is capable of handling its biggest star responsibly. If they get this wrong, it won't just be about this season. It'll be a stain on how the league is run for years to come. SO, what do you think? Is Caitlin Clark's injury just a slow-healing groin strain, or are the WNBA and Fever front office hiding something bigger? Drop your thoughts below. And while you're here, hit like, subscribe, and turn on that bell. Because when Clark finally comes back, whether it's next week or the playoffs, you're going to want the update first.